Hello and welcome to The Intersection on Labour Social. And tonight I'm joined... Well, no, actually, you're supposed to be presenting this, aren't you, Rachel? Do you want to introduce me?
Oh, well, hi, I'm Rachel Harris. It's great to be on the Intersexual. That's good. I like that. Let's do Intersexual. That's a much better channel. On the Intersection on Labour Social. And I am here this evening with the wonderful Graham Hughes. Graham, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Graham Hughes. I'm the person who runs Labour Social. Very ineptly, but I'm doing my best, and that's the main thing. But yeah, a big shout out to everyone in the chat, our socialites. We've got Rachel in there. We've got a different Rachel. We've got Billy and Evil Ginger, and we've also got Davies is in there. One Angry Pagan, Benjamin, Ivan, Billy, GHK, Tommy. We've got Jenny. We've got Dave W. We've got Lucas, and we've got Sean. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
So yeah, we're going to be talking today about the resurrection, the reanimation, the digging up from the grave of Section 28, and then they're trying to resuscitate it, bring it back to life, breathe it back into life. Section 28 was a rule that existed in the 80s and 90s, up until 2003, actually, on the local educational authority charter, which said that teachers weren't allowed to talk about homosexuality or promote it as a normal lifestyle, which meant that an entire generation of young gay men and women didn't get to find out that it was perfectly normal for them to fancy someone of their own sex. And they were bullied, and they were teased, and they were subjugated. I mean, just subjected to some cruel and unusual punishments for who they were. It was a horrible rule. They got rid of it in 2003, and now the Tories want to bring it back, but specifically for trans people.
Yay.
Which they want to say they don't exist.
It's a ridiculous rule. I mean, I was at school under Section 28 before, and it was, all the people that were gay that I was at school with still came out as gay as soon as they left school and got on with their lives. They were just miserable at school.
Yeah.
And they,
that's the time you want to be miserable, isn't it?
Same sex. I mean, it was all the same. It doesn't stop you being trans because teachers can't talk about it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's not going to. There is this thing called I don't know if you've heard this thing, Graham. It's called Google, right? I don't know if kids have heard about it.
Google,
yeah.
Are they what you wear when you go swimming? You wear
swimming just like Googles. That. Googles, yeah. And there is something called you can use your Who for downloading Google. But they're gonna know that trans people exist. They're gonna be on social media, and so they're gonna know that it's a ridiculous. It's just part of a suite, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, of sweeping political ideas that the Tories have come up with, and they've really stepped it up. Probably, I mean, it's been bad since 2016, as we said, onwards, and it really stepped after Boris. But now there's a whole suite of stuff happening especially over the last 3 to 4 weeks. It's really been fun and relentless. Every day there's something new celebrity, new politician says something, and it comes from a sort of hopeless front bench of politicians that 2 years ago I'd never seen before, because they're obviously scraping the bottom of their new barrel.
It's not just the Tories. Labour have to take some criticism here. Keir Starmer apologising to Rosie Duffield for some reason. What she said was prejudiced and bigoted, and he had to apologise.
I think you're right. I think what's hit me hardest is that obviously I'm on a Labour. We are not affiliated to Labour, and I'm on here because you are a good trans ally, and I hope we use the power of this channel to make Labour more trans inclusive. But I think what's hit me the hardest is that Wes apologising to Rosie Duffield, their general acceptance of the flawed Cass report, which has been disappointing. Kieran is adult human female comments.
Yes.
They're already I mean, it feels like the trans community are going to get run over by the Labour bus. It's just a slightly smaller bus than the Tory bus. Maybe one less deck. But it's still going to come at us. And I don't think there are some great people in Labour as politicians who are pro-trans. I just don't know if there's going to be enough of them to actually move our rights forward. So anything that the Tories do, there's a lot of guidance we can talk about that's out at the moment. A lot of kind of polls and surveys that are nasty out at the moment. But if they do manage to get this Section 28 into scores, and let's say the Supreme Court case goes through on sex and gender, and we suddenly get kicked out of Lose, is Labour going to roll that back in there? Are they? That's what I'm worried about. Are they actually going to do anything? Or are they going to go, you know what, it's our first 100 days, we're a bit busy.
It's worth mentioning that Labour didn't repeal Section 28 until well into their second term of office.
Yeah. It's, you know, I mean, you know, I saw PMQs today. Obviously, we were all waiting for Caroline Noakes to charge across the aisle. Sadly, maybe next week. But I thought that, you know, I mean, he opened with the lanyard attack, which was quite good because, I mean, that's one of the things we can talk about, the lanyards in the civil service. I mean, it's just ridiculous culture. If you're scared of a lanyard, you are really at the bottom of lanyards are important. They are, you know, for me, a lanyard in an organization is a visible ally that I can go to when I'm having a bad day, right?
Yeah.
It shows I'm okay with you. Come and talk to me. I may be a member of the community. I'm going to get it, or I'm an ally. And you see, even when Rishi's doing you see a couple of his civil servant guys behind him wearing LGBT lanyards. His advisors wear them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this is sort of where we should go really at the start. I mean, the civil service are going to ignore it. I think they're already ignoring a lot of all the stuff about banning DEI. They're still doing it. They're just not shouting about it.
Oh no, you're frozen.
Am I
frozen? Yeah. I don't know what's happened there.
Oh,
I don't know why you're frozen.
Am I frozen? Oh, can you hear me?
Oh, now you stopped being frozen. I don't know. Maybe the kids send the telly on. Stealing all our bandwidth.
1 gigabyte here. 1 gigabyte.
Oh my God. I've got to stop you there because Ivan Ambrose has dropped 200 quid in a super chat. Thank you so much, Ivan. We've never had a super chat on that level before. That is amazing. That is incredibly generous. As a gay man, here's my boost for the LGBTQI plus community. Thank you so much, Ivan. That means the world. That is amazing. Also, Joanne, £5 super chat as well. Thank you very much. I left the Labour Party after the recent Wes Streeting / Starmer comments. Really disappointed. And I think there's a lot of people who feel exactly the same as you, Joanne. And I struggle with it. I really struggle with it, especially when it comes to not just Labour's position on trans issues, but also their position on the EU and proportional representation. My take on it is, and feel free to disagree with me in the chat and we can talk about it, is that I would rather be in the tent pissing out rather than outside the tent pissing in. I think that if I say to Labour, well, I didn't vote for you last time because you're all a bunch of fuckers, but I want you to do what I say. I think that's less of a thing that we can actually push. If we, unlike, hey, we helped you get elected.
Yeah,
we were making shows that were getting more interaction and more interaction and more traction than the programs, well, the content that you make on your official Labour channel, which we do. But that's I think that's a stronger position to be in, to be inside the tent pissing out. And I just want to say the nominations for the Labour candidate for North Islington is up for grabs at the end of the month. So if anyone in the trans community wants to stand against Jeremy Corbyn,
do it.
Do it.
Yeah, I think it's time. Definitely. I think it has been so worrying. I know that Labour is playing its Ming Vars skating on ice policy, and I know they don't want the Telegraph and Times and Daily Mail, who are the ones pushing out the whole Section 28 stuff this morning, to attack them. But you know, Annalisa Dodds, you know, met the LGB Alliance. You know, that's not great. I didn't know about that till I saw it on your program this morning. I was like, I was already in a grey place this morning. And then I heard that. No, it's all right. You know, it's what it is. You know,
did you watch the show where I was talking about what I'm planning to do on Labour Social? Have a new show called How We Fix Britain.
Yeah.
I'm really up for this. I'm trying to just get everything in place, get animations, and then we're gonna have guests coming on, and we're going to be talking about, rather than oh my God, here's a bunch of terrible things that happened. Yeah. Isn't that awful? Yeah. It's going to be a lot more focused on what we can do in the future to make things better and just to make life just nicer for people.
Yeah, what would be that like? I mean, I think we're at peak trans at the moment. I mean, that's the trouble, peak anti-trans.
Yeah.
The only way. Yeah, I mean, once the Tories have gone, I mean, let's say Labour are not going to be as bad, and they're just not going to be great unless we make them great, and that is by this channel growing, and a lot of other, the LGBT community. I have to say, we've always been pretty divided. Has really started to pull together. I've seen a lot of kindness, even with the trans community. We can be a bit unkind to each other, and I'm seeing a lot more pulling together and a lot more checking in, and that. There's a silver lining there. And I think there's a lot more organization, a lot of fundraising going on. And a lot of trans people are working very hard, but they're just not shouting about it because, if you shout about it, you're in the Telegraph the next morning, or or there'll be some horrible article about you, or you'll get a pile on. And so there are a lot of people working.
That's where I feel like people like myself who aren't trans can really help, because we can be saying the same thing as you and saying this is wrong, this is out of order, and if they come after us, it's like well, it's not as big of a deal as people who are already angry at you for existing because they've been told to be angry about you existing by the bloody press, by the Tory party, by Rupert Murdoch, by J.K. Rowling, who has just gone off. I mean, in even the last few weeks, she's been told off by Elon Musk for going a bit far.
Yeah,
and now she's just coming out with just blatant transphobic attacks. She was doing this against a trans football manager. And she just responded to this story about this trans woman who was managing a football team in the most horrific way, something as a horrible little 15-year-old troll would do.
Yeah, I mean, it was that I saw that, and the person I connected to them online. There's a lot of love from the trans community supporting, and this is what I was talking about, the community coming out to make sure each of us are okay. I think the rhetoric has. The reason it started, as I've often said, it started with gay rights in America being one, and think tanks in Washington, that your fun ones like Heritage Foundation, people like that, have kind of all got together and said it was always about women's rights and abortion, and the only way they could get to that is by who are allies to women, LGBT people, who are allied to LGBT people, who's the strongest ally to LGBT, are trans, and who are allied. And disability groups and all the right across the spectrum, and it was divide and conquer. Now, to get trans being the lowest hanging fruit in the UK for rights, you have to get people to attack them. So the right-wing media, the opportunist Conservative government from 2019 onwards said, this is a vote winner for us. The papers want to write, go to their Section 28 place. So you start the hatred, you start the 10,000 articles in 2 years in media in the British press. Hate crime against the trans people rise by 56%. You also have to ban trans people from the media. So they're not on the Tonight, on Newsnight anymore. You don't have on Question Time. There's no lovely articles about us on newspapers. There's no features about us. There's no trans voices to counteract.
Yeah.
So you do that as well. So you silence us so we don't have a voice, and then you attack us in the media, and you also create a fun organization which has got LGBT people in it, supposedly attacking trans rights, and you break the T. So there are gay guys out there attacking trans people. There are members of the community, not many, but there are out there, and they're quite vocal, and you break that T off. And then you're just left. Then there's the LGB there floating on its own. No trans people anymore to be able to be allies to her. They're weaker. And you go after same-sex marriage, same-sex adoption, and IVF, and that's on the route map. It's already happening in America. Who are playing this out in fast time? LGBT community collapses. We're not visible anymore. We're all back in the closet and hiding, or moving into Europe, or hiding in Ireland, whatever we're all doing. We're not there anymore. And then boom, women. And you look at some of those hard rights. You look at the stuff that Mary Kate has said about women in education that she said at the Nazi conference. You look at articles by some of those anti-trans campaigners saying maybe women, there should be a gender pay gap. Maybe women shouldn't have that sort of education. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe there should be. You've got politicians in America saying women shouldn't be allowed to vote. And that's a view that is coming over here. And now you're hearing hey, I'm just asking questions about abortion. It's not just about the woman, is it? It's about the child in Parliament. And then once that's done, we're talking about abortion in the UK and women's rights. Hello, Handmaid's Tale. And that is the route map. Trans kids, tick. Trans adults, on the attack. Gay people, women, and disabled people and black people who have always been constantly under attack by this government. And then it's white old guys over 50 who vote Conservative. And that's what you've got left. And that's the strategy. And that's what they're running. And it's backed up by a right-wing media. And it's working.
It is absolutely working, because there's a poison pill in all this, is that the TERFs, and the clue is in the name, they have co-opted feminism for their own nefarious evil, I guess, ends. And they've turned what should be an empowering movement for women that includes trans women and black women and Chinese women, all women, is now saying, no, there's only one type of woman, and everyone else who isn't that type isn't a woman and is not part of our movement.
And the funny thing is, and here it comes, when we all end up in camps or whatever, it will be that these anti-trans campaigners, when they suddenly lose their rights, they'll go, it was trans people's fault because we took our eye off the ball to attack them and we weren't watching our rights. That's what they'll say. We'll still get the blame. They'll be totally delusional about this. And that's where they are. You already see it.
I think I've got a couple of super chats. Thank you very much to go through to Stephen Wallace saying, not peak trans yet, Graham. No, we peak anti-trans. And we've got Adrian Byrne saying, thank you very much for the super chat. I went through Section 28 the first time round. I genuinely believe most of the decent non-LGBTQ public won't let that shit fly this time around. And I have seen critical articles already today in the newspaper saying this is ridiculous. And we'll get into this in a moment. Sorry, we were about to say something.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that we will finish with some, more optimistic. I'm just giving you the peak anti-trans stuff that's going on. I wouldn't be on this chat if I didn't think we had a hope, and I think we do. There's a lot of pushback on the school's guidance today. I just read an article in the Independent. It's not trending well. It's certainly not. The pollsters are all saying, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Nobody cares about 95% of the public in the UK don't care about trans people, not in a bad way. They just don't want to know about trans people. They want to know about the NHS and the cost of living and the climate collapsing on us. They don't care about trans people, and they know we're not a threat to them, and it hasn't stuck. But I do think that this government is like the Russians are coming, the Germans are now burning all the papers in the chateau. This is basically the Tory party. What damage can we cause on the way out? And you've got the most right-wing elements really, just before PMQs this morning, you should have heard the debate this morning. It was a frenzied, foaming at the mouth, anti-trans conversation. And it's all the usual all the people you'd expect to be doing it. And this is their last desperate. They've got a few, the Russians are going to be storming the chateau grounds soon, and they'll be nipping out the back in their jeeps. And I think that's where they are. They've got to do some damage before they get out of Dodge. And this is what they're trying. They may not get their Section 28 in time. Depends when the election is. This school's guidance,
well, that's the hope, isn't it? They're a lame duck government. They're a zombie government. They're not going to get any legislation passed realistically in the next few years.
Even by statutory instrument. They might try a statutory instrument, but I don't think they may not have the time.
But, I mean, if we're going to dive into this intervention that they want to do under Gillian Keegan, who I renounce as a Scouser, by the way. She's not one of us. I apologise profusely for her and Esther McVeigh. And there's another one, isn't there? Nadine Dorries. Oh, Jesus. I'm so sorry, rest of the country. But yeah, with this particular idea, they're going to make it so that children under the age of 9 aren't given any advice in school about personal changes to their bodies at all. Because you're not taught about sex at 9 years old. You're taught about your own body and relationships. And to point at one particular relationship and say, that's not a normal relationship to a child, I think is cruelty. I mean, that, especially if they've got gay parents. maybe one of their parents is trans, maybe both their parents are trans, and they're going to get bullied in school because the teacher said your parents, that's not a normal relationship. That's not a healthy relationship, when it is. No one else's business. But the other thing is that you always find that the people who are most angry about children learning about sex when they're in school, that they don't want children to know about sex for some reason. And the only reason I could see is so it makes it easier for the people who want to abuse children to get away with it. Because the kids won't know what's happening to them because it hasn't been explained.
But in the States, you have to see the most prolific anti-trans campaigner. There's one this way wants the ability to marry a 14-year-old. It's like, what is going on? And yet nobody raises an eyebrow in the Senate houses about that. But a trans kid wants to do a bit of sport or live their life quietly with parental consent and get on with their lives. Well, suddenly they're freaking out about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is just weird, the things that people are freaking out about, like you say, sports in school, kicking around the football on the field, like that's dead important. We have to stop trans women from taking part in that. And then the other one is toilets. This obsession with public toilets. Like J.K. Rowling has used a public bathroom in the last 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, she's a billionaire. She carries her own bloody bathroom around with her, or at least her servants do. It drives me up the wall. Like this is. Oh, and they say, we need a women's refuge. Yeah. And I had one of my friends who's non-binary on the pubcast. I'm trying to remember what we changed the name of it to, because it was a bit non-inclusive, calling it Three Blokes in a Pub. We changed it to Pubcast, which then Joe sort of stole from us, but that's okay. I didn't copyright it or nothing. And what Alex was saying was that Alex worked in a women's shelter in Canada and said there were trans women there.
Yeah.
Everyone had their own room. What do you think a shelter is? Do you think it's like a big dormitory with bunk beds? What?
Yeah.
And this idea that everyone worked through what had happened to them in a group session. No, it was one-to-one. And if they wanted to go to a group session, they could. And it's just the stuff that they decided to pick on. It's like these are things that most people just got on with in the past, and suddenly it's the most important thing. And if you take a step back out of all the emotion and how we feel about it all, and just look at the world and go, oh my God, it's so easy to manipulate people into believing whatever shit you want them to believe.
Yeah, it is the, I mean, if you were a catastrophe kind of person, I'm not. And if the world has 10 years before it all the climate collapses, and aliens land on the earth in 100 years time, they'll go, let's look at their media, and they'll find their newspapers, and they'll go, they were obsessing about where they shit and poo, why their world was dying around them. It's a bit like, I always see images of the Titanic going down and all the Tories at the back going, don't let the poor people use the loo. But look, what are you doing? We're all going to die, but they're still obsessing about toilets. And that just seems, this is not something anybody had any concern about until they created the moral war about it. Yeah. And now it's become, and half the people in the battle are coming to it ill-informed, or they think, oh yeah, the men in women's spaces, that's a bad thing, I'm against that, because they don't understand trans lives and trans experience. They just hear half the messaging. And so they've managed to get quite an army of people at the moment in a frenzy. But there are more people, good people out there, who don't believe it or don't care in a good way. Time will change, but they are still pushing. There are lots of little nasty surveys out there that which are going to hurt the trans community. We know the NHS have got their 10-year review. That is about it. If you read that, and I do suggest people go and look at the NHS review and fill it in. You can do that as a member of the public. But it's about segregating trans people, treating them by sex only, and ignoring gender identity. There's a lot of pretty difficult stuff in there to read. So that's Kemi's got the Send Us Your Bad Trans Policy Guidance survey, which is pretty nasty, and the CIPD, which is a really lovely organization. If you're an HR person, member of the CID, they might need a bit of support. They wrote an excellent trans guide. spoke to a lot of trans organizations and a lot of legal firms, created this perfect transgender guide for employers, small employers, large, and that's under attack. And so CIPD could do with a bit of love, I think. I know that mischievously, a lot of trans people have submitted the single sex guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Committee to Kemi, saying the single sex guidance, which is not very good and being criticised. People are submitting that to Kemi as bad guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Committee, rather mischievously. I'm not saying you should do that, of course, but I'm saying that I've seen some people have done that. And then there's the University College London have got a survey out at the moment. I know that's being go and take a look at it. It looks a bit worrying. It's about sex and gender, and are speakers being suppressed by coming to universities because of sex and gender? And it looks a bit. I haven't really got into that yet. I haven't got the strength to read yet another one of those nasty surveys. But I know there's some inclusive feminist movement looking at it and taking that apart. So that is good. And that's another, it looks like another. And so there are 3 surveys out at the moment, all of which are quite dark and exclusionary. So it would be good if people looked at those and filled them in from a point of an ally. So there's the NHS 10-year constitutional survey. There's the University College one on sex and gender. I haven't looked at that myself yet, but have a look at it. If you're a professor or you work in education,
we'll put the link into the description.
Yeah, if you work in education, might be worth trying to fill that out. And then there's Kemi's got she's asking for people to send. It's on the government website. Bad policy that might exclude, and a lot of good policies have been submitted. So it might be good to her, which could get them banned. I mean, so. It might be quite good to have a look at those 3 surveys. They're not widely known because they don't get any traction outside negative trans movements. So those are going on in it's part of, and also with the lanyards and now the Section 28. There's obviously this big push. So
I'm going to read a couple of chats at the moment. But first of all, I just want to say, I think the most disappointing person in all this is Wes Streeting, because not only is Wes Streeting a Labour MP, he's also gay, and that makes him feel like he should be a natural ally, and he's not, because ambition. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to have a chat with him. Karen leaves a really lovely message. Thank you very much, Karen, saying, I don't know why some people are so insecure that they feel threatened by people who are different to them. Live and let live, and hearts. And that sentiment is fantastic. And I think live and let live should be it should be the motto, shouldn't it, of the anti-trans movement.
An open book.
Alex the Sixth says, maybe someone mistook Rowling for a trans man or trans woman, and that made her declare war on trans. It's effing weird. I've got my own theory on that, but I don't know. I don't know what switch went in her head a few years ago, but I think she woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because trans people existed. And she started off going, I'm not, I will march at trans people. I will support trans people. I'll be your ally. And it's gone from there to the point now where she's just trolling trans people like our friend India Willoughby online for no reason whatsoever other to be a troll. And then we've got Sean saying, as a gay man, I feel like we've been passed on a poison chalice. It feels very much how gay men were treated in the 80s and 90s. Yep, absolutely. I think the big difference between now and then is the movement, the civil rights movement in America in particular, was also for gay rights as well, not just people who are of African origin. And also in the miners' strike in the 1980s, they were supported by the gay community. And feminists would support gay men. They would support gay men as well as lesbian women. Now, some people who claim to be feminists are going absolutely apeshit at the fact that trans people exist.
And I think it comes down to, there's also, social media, which wasn't there under Section 28, has, it's made everybody binary. You're either for us or against us. There's no grey on social media, and that's why I'm not on
spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you need a spectrum to be fabulous.
Yeah, and I'm not on social media, which just keeps my mental health in good faculty. But the so that's one aspect of it. Also, we have a close relationship. Europe, Sweden and Germany have just done self-ID, and you can do it really young with parental cassette. I mean, they're moving forward. Ireland's still moving forward. All the other European countries are generally moving forward, despite right-wing, a lot of right-wing swings and stuff. They're still moving forward. Yeah. It's really, we're very unique here because we're segregated from the European continent. We are, the other aspect is that, we have a government that wants to take our rights away with the European Court of Human Rights. And we are taking a lot of money is coming into the UK, according to the United Nations, from the United States, from some of those fun groups that we all know the name of, and the sort of Handmaid's Tale, and they're pumping lots of money in. That's why some people can raise defense funds really quickly, because these funds they're well funded. And these people who are fighting against trans rights, these organizations are against women's rights, but it suits their aim to get these women to attack trans people. So once they've done that, then they'll withdraw the funding and come for them. And that's the success of being a good ally, is that when I do talks, which is quite rare now, but when I do, I talk to gender networks and inclusive feminist networks, and I talk about the UN report that says they're coming for your body autonomy. And they're doing that by divide and conquer. The UN is saying that. If you look at opendemocracy.com, loads of articles about women's rights are under attack, and they're stamping over trans people to get there. And so if you were part of the foot soldiers attacking trans people, as I often say, you've rowed your boat out into the middle of the lake and you're shooting a bloody big hole in it, because once you finish with us, they're coming for you.
And look who's in that boat. Look who's in that boat. Vladimir Putin is in that boat. Donald Trump is in that boat. Every racist, every bigot, every transphobe. Obviously transphobe, but every homophobe is in that boat with you. Darian, to start, agreeing with you in the chat, they're saying the whole anti-trans stuff is a well-established part of American far-right political strategy. And the places that are the most anti-trans are also the most anti-gay, anti-women, and anti-minority. Absolutely.
Just look at the right-wing commentators in America, all the fun ones. They are not banging on just about trans people. They're banging on about women's rights. Some of them are saying they wouldn't get on a plane piloted by a black person. They wouldn't get on a plane piloted by a woman because that's DEI. These are the cranks that are coming after trans people there, and they're connected to the groups here.
The attacks on DEI really, really get my back up. How dare they? How absolutely dare they? What these people want to do is they want to take away the disabled ramps. That's their they walk along the streets and they see a disabled ramp and they're like, grrr, we should have steps in that. We're just making it easy for the Daleks. And you're like, what is wrong with you?
But the attacks on DEI, like attacking characteristics under the Equality Act and separating us so we fight each other. It's a divide and conquer rule. But DEI, the reason they did that is because since 2016, companies have been interested in DEI. They know that a diverse and included workforce gives them better R&D and again more profit. I mean, they're not saints, but more profit and a happier general workforce. Companies know that, and they've been protecting trans rights and LGBT rights and women's rights, and they've been working on the gender pay gap. Now, along comes your right-wing complete nut job and says, these people are stopping us with our Handmaid's Tale vision of the world. So what do? We say DEI is bad, and we say everything that we don't like, this cup, is woke. Everything is woke and everything is bad that's DEI. And that's the strategy in America. And when you start hearing conservatives saying woke and it's a gender ideology, and then you know that they're running the strategy that's running in the US, and it's being piped in.
In the chat, we had Ivan Ambrose saying, but we're not going anywhere, which is great. No. Please do not go anywhere. And also Joe Lefty Bosa in the chat. This is the real life consequence of what J.K. Rowling and Graham Linehan and these Posey Parker and these horrible transphobes putting their toxic transphobia out into the world every day. Every day you see Rowling trending on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. And Joe said, I was followed half a mile down the canal by a phobe this afternoon. I ended up running.
Oh my goodness.
In 2020. I'm really sorry that happened to you, Joe.
Yeah, it is.
This is when I start getting really upset because why?
It is. I mean, it is. You know, I mean, it's mental health awareness week as well. I mean, it never has this been much. It was that last week. I've lost track, but it was never a truer, a more important week for the community. Well, across all communities. A lot of my friends who are disabled are having trouble with all the PIPs announcements and all the other stuff that's going on. We're going to do a program about that. And you know, it is. You know, they want you not to be on the streets. They don't want you in their restaurants. They don't want you to exist. And the thing that really bugs them is that we do exist, and we are out, and we are visible, and we get ourselves out, and we go out with our friends, and we have a good time, and we live our best lives. It's the thing that annoys them the most. And the fact is, they can keep coming at us, but there are more and more of us. 28% of Generation Z identify as LGBTQI. There are more of them, and they're just about to vote and give the Tories a spanking. Probably not in a good way. Don't get excited, Tories. It's not the way you enjoy it. But they are going to get spanked. And Gen Z is coming, and Gen Alpha after them, the one that she's trying to ban. Don't talk about trans people in schools. Well, they're being brought up by Gen Z, who, guess what, are really good at this. So it doesn't matter they're not told about it at school. The parents are going to tell them about it, and they're going to see it on the internet. So you do your best. There are more and more of us coming forward. And, you know, when soon as you go into opposition, you're going to split and start eating each other. And I don't care.
Yeah. Well said. Kit Knight saying hello. Hello, Kit. And also Joe Lefty saying the sexual threat thing 9 times out of 10 is utter projection. Yeah. And I feel that way about J.K. Rowling. You know, I know you're not supposed to talk about how people look, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not. I don't know what made that switch flick in her head, but I think that somebody said something along the lines of, because, you know, she writes under a man's name, Robert Galbraith, the name of a what did he do? Did he do
detective? Is it?
Yeah, no, but the real Robert Galbraith was a doctor who specialized in what's it called, where they make gay people not gay.
Oh yeah, like conversion therapy.
Yeah, conversion therapy. He was a conversion therapy doctor person. Yeah. Great name to pick. But yeah, I think someone said, I know why by the other one, Graham Linehan hates trans people so much. And I'm not allowed to say it, but I do know why it is. And if you know, because it's out there, that he doesn't have any contact with his wife or 2 children anymore, you might be able to guess, if you squint and read between the lines, why that might be. So have a think. But yeah, personal vendettas against entire minorities is
I think the other aspect,
vile. It's childish.
The other thing I often see, lazy. I mean, apart from people in the closet, can be the cruelest transphobe or homophobe who are not out, and they see you living your life and getting on with it. That can be quite cruel. The other one is, you know, they might make a slip up and they get corrected online, and you know, they feel a bit uncomfortable. And just at that vulnerable moment where they could go for an educational step, the Moonies arrive and envelop them with, "No, it's fine to be transphobic. We love you." And they get taken off into their anti-trans cult, and they go, "Oh, it's easier to actually hate than to actually learn and educate and be inclusive and get on and be. It's much easier to join the Moonies." And that sometimes happens, and it just, you know, they just get enveloped, and then they're surrounded by people that they never hear any counter arguments. And that's a shame. And you know, why the world's burning and why, you know, women's rights are going to be at risk. They are missing all of that, and that's so sad.
Yeah, and that's the annoying thing. It's like there were so many parallels, and I hope you don't think I'm being facetious when I say this, but there's so many parallels with Brexit, the whole breaking the grouping up of, you know, separate the UK from the EU, but also the fact that the people who wanted Brexit because they love their country, or more honestly, because they didn't like the number of black and brown people in this country, they've got the opposite of what they wanted by going for Brexit. And this is what's happening to the trans folk. They are going to get especially women, especially gay women who are like, gay women transphobes are the ones that blow my mind. I just, I'm like, what? you do know that they will come for you next. But
yeah, and they're planning it. There was a leak of a report last year that just the roadmap isn't just trans, it's gay marriage, and it was all and it was leaked. I think it was ITV or something had the report that was leaked out of government somewhere, and it was like there was a whole roadmap of stuff, and it was like, oh god.
Yeah. And then you got feminists who are women feminists saying, I don't want trans women using my bathroom, and I'm going to make this whole big song and dance about it. So we have a law, like they do in some states in America now, where trans women cannot use cis women's bathrooms, right?
Yeah.
Now, what that means is there's a law in place that empowers people. And you know what people are like when they're empowered by a law? Try being a pedestrian in America where jaywalking is against the law and see how you get on. Oh my God, it's terrifying because every driver's like, I know the law. They shouldn't be on the road in the first place. If I hit them, it's their own fault. And that kind of mentality. You know, the type of person who will pull out a little bit to stop you going past when the lanes are merging because, you've got a little, what are they called? Jobs worths. That's it. Yeah. You're going to have Jobsworths in the bathroom accusing women, cisgender women who don't look traditionally feminine, of being trans. And I could see that happening, J.K. Rowling. I could see that happening to the cast.
It's already happening.
The cast report.
Yeah, more non-trans women have been thrown out of loos than trans women in the UK. I mean,
which can lead to violence.
Yeah, and there's misogyny right there that the supposed feminists are fighting against because it's misogyny to look at a woman and make a judgment out of 10 of how feminine she is, and that's what they're doing. Sorry, you don't look feminine enough, therefore you must be a man. I'm gonna throw you out of this toilet. That's applying a misogyny standard right there.
It is. It's the opposite of feminism. Rachel in the chat says, "What about trans men?" Yes, we should be talking about trans men more.
We are going to have a trans guy on to talk about this.
Yes,
we don't want to make this the trans channel, but we are. Because it's all trans in the news at the moment. We are.
And it's important to have somewhere that's a safe space where we can talk about this stuff without all the trolls piling in. So,
and there's some great trans guys out there. And there's a lot of, if you go on YouTube or you go on, go on to Instagram, you'll see a load of trans guys who are, they've worked out, they've done they are built like brick shit houses.
Yes.
And they are going to have to be forced to go into women's loos under the new rule. That is ridiculous.
With their beards. With their literal beards on their faces and their massive biceps.
Yeah, and we're not talking, and of course, non-binary people, again, they are, they don't really, they should be able to use the loo that they want to use, but but a lot of them want an all-gender loo as well. And Kemi's saying, well, I want single-sex loos. But I don't, all gender loos, I don't want to. They don't even want to. If you were going to segregate us to stick us in the trans loo, Kemi doesn't even want us to have a trans loo, so it's not even segregation. It's not annihilation, but it's making us invisible because we will not be able to go out within an hour of our houses because we will need a loo. I wouldn't be able to drive to Manchester, which is 5 hours away. I wouldn't be able to go on holiday because I would need to use a loo before I got on the plane, which has an all-gender loo, but I won't get to it because I'll pee my pants before I get to it. And that's just a ridiculous. Non-binary people, I mean, they've been using places, I've had stories from friends that go to work and they nip out and use the Pret, which normally have a non-binary loo. But under Kemi's rules, you won't be able to have a single-sex loo anymore, an all-gender loo in Pret, because Kemi wants to have male and a female loo. So that is just a ridiculous...
It makes so you're gonna have to give more of your floor space to toilets so you can have two different toilets.
I don't think they even like super loos. So the banks in Canary Wharf have been getting around this problem because they have corridors of super loos. They just say WC on the door. In there, lovely sink, lovely loo, lovely mirror. Go in, do your business. Go. I love those because then there's no hassle. They're private. But no, super loos are not viewed as something that should exist either.
Yeah. Just following up on just before you said what you said about using trans men using cis men's bathrooms. Darian made that point, said then trans men are some of the most masculine men I know. They really work on their bodies. They're great. Rachel in the chat, who was asking about trans men. Before then, Rachel put a note about asking about Robert Sapolsky, who is a doctor, I think, who's been backing up the science around being transgender. So yeah, maybe if maybe we get it, maybe if we get him on the show, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Let's try. I mean, the fact is that they enjoy. I mean, the Cash report ignored 99 scientific reports on on gender support and so the science is often ignored, but it'd be good to get a scientist on to talk about the science.
Yeah. Also, Kit in the chat, Kit Knight says, talk to me anytime you like. Clued in older trans mask here. I got round to coming out at 46 because of shit around ROGD. Nothing rapid here. What's ROGD?
Oh, I think is it rapid onset gender
dysphoria.
Okay. Yeah, this is the one of
their rapid here.
Yeah, that's quite funny. There was because that was one of there was some dodgy paper written that all the kids were coming out and blah 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 and transitioning, and it was defunct really quickly. But it's a paper that some transphobes rely on still.
Yeah. Kit, please get in touch. Head over to grahamdavidhughes.com. There's a form at the bottom of the page. Fill that out, send me a message, and we'll get you on the show to talk about trans mask issues as well as
brilliant
trans women. Should we end on a bit of a lighter note? Let's talk about Baby Reindeer. Have you watched it?
I haven't. Because I only read trans stuff and trans papers and scientific papers and papers about trans and Star Trek.
And Star Trek.
And so, I didn't understand. I know that Piers Morgan got the woman on, but there was a big kickoff. You explain that to me.
Well, I wasn't going to bring up the point of the show. I mean, honestly, it's one of the most devastating, horrible, just things to watch. It's all there. It's all there. And when you think it just can't get any worse, it somehow gets worse. It's probably the most honest bit of television I've ever seen, to be honest with you. But there is a trans character in it called Terry who is absolutely fabulous, and she is the rock in the show, and everyone absolutely loves her, and she is such a great, showing a trans person who's just happy in who they are, getting on with their lives, and the shit they have to put up with. From transphobes like the crazy woman who's following Richard Gadd around. But that's at least a positive portrayal of a trans person. Yeah,
and they
TV.
Often are. I love all the Doctor Who representation. That has been amazing, and that must drive a right winger mad, because they like Doctor Who, but they must hate the trans characters being in it. They love they love a lot of them like Star Trek, but they must hate Discovery because they've got non-binary representation, trans representation, and not a gay representation.
They've got a gay black man from Rwanda in the leading role. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it must really confuse it. I always think it's
was
funny.
Brilliant. I loved him in Sex Education. I think he's a doctor that I want to travel the universe with. I mean, no offense to Jodie Whittaker or even Peter Capaldi, who I loved as a doctor. I wouldn't want to be traveling around the universe in a box with a gruff Scottish fella. Do you know what I mean? Shitty Gatwick, come on. He's Scottish as well, but there's nothing to it being Scottish.
But sci-fi is a contradiction to right wingers and nutters, because I've said this to you before. I know I've said it on the social. When they go to Star Wars, they always think that they're the rebels, don't they? They always think that we're the rebels. There was, that horrible guy from Texas. He's like, "Oh, I'm a rebel. We're the rebels" at the CPAC conference. No, you're the bloody Empire. We're the rebels. There's less of us, and you're picking on us with your big power.
And your money and your influence.
Yeah, that makes you the Emperor with the Death Star. We're the Rebel Alliance that's annoying the crap out of you.
Also, 10th and 14th Doctor, David Tennant, fabulous trans ally. He's been absolutely brilliant. And Nemo won the Eurovision Song Contest, and I know that the contest was steeped in controversy. Yeah, but we had a non-binary person win the contest deservedly. I voted for Finland because I thought that was just an hilarious show where he didn't have his pants. But my second choice was definitely Switzerland.
And they had to sneak their non-binary flag in with them because they banned the non-binary flag.
They banned the EU flag as well. Funny, these bands sort of go hand in hand, don't they?
Oh, we wait to the next night of the proms. EU, non-binary flag.
One angry pagan saying Capaldi is the best of the new Who Doctors. Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying whether I'd want to travel around the universe with them.
Yeah.
Getting into scrapes. I mean, I just think that a night out on the universe with Ncuti Gatwa would be absolutely freaking hilarious. Maybe a bit scary when the aliens turn up and they want to eat our brains, but you know.
Yeah. I like them all for different reasons. I mean, so like somebody asked me which Star Trek captain I loved, and it took me about an hour to answer that one. But I like all the doctors for different reasons, because John Pertwee was my doctor because I was young, you know. But I really like Chris Eccleston because it was, you know, he was a working class actor. His funniest line when he's in the TARDIS and he's got his screen on and she goes, yeah, it gets the football, you know, and it's just like, well, how come you've got a northern accent? Well, every planet's got a north, he says. I mean, I love those lines. That's what I loved about Chris Eccleston.
He was very good.
He really energized the franchise again as well after. You know,
he has a very gleeful smile. I don't think before then, when I watched him in Cracker and Our Friends in the North, I never saw him smile. He was in Jude the Obscure, a film based on Jude the Obscure called Jude, which was just depressing as hell. And then suddenly he's the doctor, and he starts off all moody, and he's, you know, he's got this big secret behind him about what's happened to Gallifrey. But then, like, just he kicks in. No, it's really, really enjoyable. And I wasn't expecting much of it because I didn't really like Billie Piper at the time, but she came. I completely came out on that one. I was wrong, and I accept responsibility.
Torchwood, which gave me more Doctor Who, you know, which I know that, you know, Chris Barrowman's been a bit contentious, but I really loved Torchwood as well, which gave me a sort of more spice of Doctor Who at a time where I really needed it. So
Tommy is saying, I recommend watching a cartoon series called The Owl House, which has two young girls who explore their feelings for one another. It also includes magic. It's a lovely series. There you go.
Thank you.
Which is nice. But yeah, just, I mean, the things are going to get better, I think. And this is why I want to leave on a sort of positive note. Because of what you said earlier, Rachel, when you said that it's making people who didn't think about this before, who were in the LGBTQIA plus community, actually start going, hang on. Why are they doing it? Who's doing this and why are they doing it? And so you're getting people who weren't standing up before, and myself included. I didn't stand up much for trans rights before sort of 2020 because I didn't think it was something that I needed to do, and I didn't think it was something that was in my, you know, that I should do. I thought, well, trans people should stand up for trans rights, but
they are.
After having that conversation with a couple of my trans friends, or a trans friend and a non-binary friend, and they said, we need allies. We need people sticking up. So everyone watching this who isn't trans themselves, you know, please speak out. And when you hear these injustices, because what the Murdoch press and the Tories and the transphobes and J.K. Rowling's of the world are very good at doing is normalizing the hate. So that's the default. Oh, you hate trans people. That's the default. So it's really important that everyone speaks out. And that's why people like, I think David Tennant is such an incredibly valuable ally, because he just says it like it is. Leave trans kids alone.
And we're seeing more of that. We're seeing pop singers wear trans rights or human rights t-shirts at concerts and stuff. Probably see a bit of that at Glastonbury this year, hopefully. To finish on a high, do you want to do the super chat?
I do. Joe Lefty Boater, thank you very much, Joe, for the super chat. My dad was an extra in Our Friends in the North. Lol. That's quite a good little bit of kudos.
I know you got one. I love that. The reason I get out of bed in the morning is that the trans community is pulling closer and closer together, and we haven't traditionally got on that well, and we are. A lot more donations into trans organizations. We're seeing a lot of LGB organizations pulling over to the trans community and reaching and enveloping them at the moment. They're realizing that they're next if they don't. So the community is becoming more unified. Allies are stepping up. LGBT, as I said, 28% of Generation Z are LGBTQI. They're just about to vote. Their parents, every one of those, it's not like 28%. They've got a mother and a father, a brother and a sister are all allies to them. They've got friends. They've got work colleagues. They are all going to vote. They've met trans people. More people are meeting trans people and are not liking the way that this is going. It's not getting political traction. So you've got the 28%. You've got their kids growing up, even though they may be not banned about talking about it at schools, but they are being brought up by trans. The reason Gen Z is so inclusive is because their parents were semi-inclusive, and their parents are a little bit, and it's going down the generations. Parents are getting more and more inclusive as it goes down the generation. So Generation Alpha, whatever you do to them in schools, they're going to be more inclusive under Gen Z. So that's a bigger crowd, and they are getting organized. And we're seeing the unions. All the unions are trans inclusive and have got good policies, and they've said it out loud.
Yeah.
And so politicians will go, oh, gender crit. Oh, there's more over there. I love trans people now. They're really great. I've always loved trans people. And you'll see that switch when it suits politicians that they're going to get more votes for it, and they're going to get more votes for it. So the optimistic view is it will change. And the right arc always is a long arc. It takes a long time. Sometimes it goes, it's slow. Sometimes the pendulum swings back a bit, but it always moves forward. It always does. And although we're at peak anti-trans, right at the moment in the dying throes of a zombie government, it will change. And so anybody's losing hope, we are going to get there. This channel's going to be there with 100,000 followers one day. It's going to grow. That's a big block of voting. We'll get there. And so I am optimistic. I have my days. Don't get me wrong. My poor wife, who is also trans, gets my negative mood sometimes. And I know she's watching, so thank you. But we will get there. So just, speak out, like, share material, donate if you can afford to, talk to your family members. Don't buy horrible newspapers, buy the good ones, and just, we'll get there.
Yeah. Oh God, that's such an empowering message to leave on, because I don't want this channel, I don't want this conversation to be all doom and gloom, because we're going to keep fighting, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to wake up one morning and go, oh, bored of that now, because this is our lives. This is the rest of our lives is going to be fighting for people like ourselves to have a nice life, to have a good time on this bloody planet. And there's those forces that don't want people to have a good time and want everyone to be as miserable and as miserly as they are. They're not going to win, because we're not going to let them win.
No, I don't. I want politics to be boring. I want it to be about beer and taxes. I don't want to have to talk about politics ever again. It's just because it's affected me and a lot of my friends. I'm involved. Hopefully once this war is won, we'll never be able to stop fighting, because they'll always be lurking in the darkness. But as long as we make a win and then we keep an eye out, we'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Big thanks to Alec Barrett for the super chat. Oldest Gen Z or Gen Z are 27 years old.
Hey, there you go. A lot of voters there then.
A lot of voters. And only 1% of them are going to vote Tory for obvious reasons. Svak says, love to Rachel's wife and all the trans people.
Oh, thank you.
And One Angry Pagan says, my shield is at the back of the trans community too. And Svak said, I watch and learn because I feel like the anti-trans culture war will get here at a certain point as well. Talking about Ukraine, I think Svak's in Ukraine. Better be ready. Indeed. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. Yeah. And so thank you so much for this, Rachel. Really
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all the super chats.
Yes, absolutely. Especially Ivan. Ivan, you absolute legend. Thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate that.
We're only a little part of the Labour Social, this channel, but I'm really, really so happy that people come on. Take the time to come and listen. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Phil will be here in the morning at 9:30 for the morning brew. And until then, I'll say thanks to all the socialites in the chat. Thanks for the super chats. Thanks to Rachel. Give us a like on the way out. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.